happy October. And on days like today, it feels like October. This morning, Bitcoin crossed $67,000 per Bitcoin. It almost hit $68,000, but I think we're going to be heading there soon. And this makes sense. We know that 6 to 18 months following the halving, which was in April of 2024, we typically start to see some big moves in the Bitcoin price. So we're closing in on 6 months since the halving. It was on April 19th. Didn't quite get 420. That would have been fun. I thought about maybe throwing like a 420 halving party. Didn't happen. But we are closing in on that mark, and it makes sense that we are starting to see the Bitcoin price move a little bit higher right now. And I think that over the next couple of months, throughout the rest of the year, Bitcoin is going to be very volatile with that diminished supply on the market. And you also just think about external factors like the election, like this war going on, like the money that all these governments are going to need to print because they're in a fuck ton of debt. I wanted to make this video to talk about why we see the Bitcoin price make big moves 6 to 18 months following the halving. Before I do get into the video, please make sure to like the video and also subscribe to the YouTube. We got a new setup in here today. I moved from my last apartment. I moved to Oregon, so it's a little bit bland right now. We don't have Mac Miller up on the wall yet, but we'll get him up there, and I'm gonna be making this setup look nice, and we're gonna be pumping out videos every week, so you're gonna want to be subscribed. Make sure you hit the button. But let's go ahead and get into the topic of this video. The simple reason for why we see the Bitcoin price move higher 6 to 18 months following the halving is supply and demand. When we have the Bitcoin halving, which we had in April of 2024, we see the Bitcoin block reward, which is the Bitcoin that is rewarded to Bitcoin miners, get cut in half. In April of this year, we saw the Bitcoin block reward get cut in half from 6.25 Bitcoin to 3.125 Bitcoin. So we have less Bitcoin coming into the total supply, the circulating supply. And it just takes a little bit of time for the market to get used to that. So as we approach 6 months following the halving and we start to see the amount of Bitcoin that's available for sale head lower, this is going to result in a higher Bitcoin price, right? If people are looking to buy Bitcoin and there isn't Bitcoin available at the current price, the price is going to head higher to force people to sell Bitcoin, right? To create a market at a higher price. That's one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin, is that we know the Bitcoin supply. We know when these Bitcoin halvings are going to happen, and we know what the new block reward is going to be. When we look at dollars, we really don't know how many dollars are out there, and the supply is always increasing, right? That's not a quality of a good money. We want our money to be hard. We want it to have a limited supply so that each unit of the money holds its value over time. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a little chart here, which shows the Bitcoin price performance following the halving. After that first halving, we saw the Bitcoin price go up 92x. That's a huge increase. And this makes sense, right? Because around that first halving, around 2012, 2013, each Bitcoin was only like $12. It was somewhere around there. So Bitcoin was under $1 billion market cap. So it didn't take much to move the Bitcoin price. Somebody could come in and invest $5 million and move the Bitcoin price up 5x like that, right? It was a lot easier to move the Bitcoin price because there just weren't that many people in the network. Not that many people had allocated to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin went up big after that first halving. After the second halving, we saw Bitcoin go up 30x, which is still a big increase, not 92x, but pretty big. And in 2020, we saw Bitcoin go up 8x. So as you can see from this chart, we've seen a little bit less appreciation after each Bitcoin halving as Bitcoin grows into a larger asset and as we see the Bitcoin market cap grow. And this makes sense that we probably won't see a 30x movement over the next year or so. That's probably not going to happen just because Bitcoin is a much larger asset now, right? It's over $1 trillion market cap. But I think with all these macro factors, we could see a big move in the Bitcoin price. And I'm expecting that we see at least $200,000 per Bitcoin this cycle, this time around over the next year. And I think it's going higher, but we will just have to see. Now, we've talked about Bitcoin supply, but let's get into Bitcoin demand and why we see a surge in Bitcoin demand as time goes on. And really, this is the formula for these big price moves, this lower amount of incoming supply and this surge in demand, right? That's going to lead to big price moves. The main reason that we see Bitcoin demand head higher after the halving and just over time in general is that more people just learn about Bitcoin. And one of the main reasons why more people learn about Bitcoin is because of how bad our current fiat money system is, where the money is always depreciating. As people go out to eat and they see their dinner is 2 times more expensive, or they see their energy bill is 2 times more expensive, it's harder for people to get by, right? They realize that life is a lot harder when the money is not hard, right? When the money is losing value. And they feel the pressure. And that pressure forces people to look to other ways to store their wealth and protect their wealth. And as Bitcoin continues to appreciate a lot more than any other asset over the last 15 years or so, people start to notice, right? When Bitcoin is a smaller asset and it's not talked about that much, people aren't really paying attention. But as it grows more and more people buy into the network, more people are talking about it. We see more vehicles for people to invest in Bitcoin, which is a major reason why we see more demand, which I'll get into in a minute. People start to learn about it and they start to say, hey, maybe I should just allocate a little bit of my capital into Bitcoin. And then as they see that capital appreciate more, they say, hey, maybe I should learn about this even more. They start listening to podcasts or listening to experts in the space, and they realize that, hey, Bitcoin's just better money. And that's the reason why Bitcoin's going to continue to appreciate forever against fiat currency, because fiat currency really isn't good money, right? It has an unlimited supply. It's constantly depreciating. It's not global. A lot of these fiat currencies are not acceptable in most parts of the world. So Bitcoin really meets those properties of money a lot more than fiat currency. If we look at this chart of the M2 money supply growth, I pulled it from 2008, which is around the time when Bitcoin started. We could see that the M2 money supply continues to grow, right? From 2008 to 2020, it had that steady growth. And then in 2020, when we got all that stimulus from the government, we saw the money supply really increase. In 2022, it peaked. And then over the past couple of years, we've seen the M2 money supply come down a little bit as the Fed looked to tighten. But now, as it looks like the Fed is going to be switching to a looser monetary policy, and the economy, the world economy, the economy in the United States really needs liquidity, right? So it doesn't fall apart. We are going to see the M2 money supply take back off. And when you just think about how much debt we've been adding to the national debt and how large our deficits have gotten, I think that we are going to see this chart really, boomerang upwards over the next couple of years. I definitely think we're going to see the money supply increase a lot. As the money supply increases and these dollars lose their value and people see asset prices heading higher, priced in dollars like Bitcoin, gold, stocks, they are going to look to these assets to protect their wealth. And I think that Bitcoin is going to hedge against that currency debasement the best. And we are going to see Bitcoin probably appreciate more than assets like gold, more than stocks and other assets because of that fixed supply that we have with Bitcoin, right? That limited supply. Bitcoin stock to flow ratio is actually now higher than gold's after that last halving in April, which I think is a big milestone for Bitcoin, as Bitcoin and gold are kind of competing to be that hard asset for people to store their wealth in. And I think over time, more people are going to choose Bitcoin because it has better monetary properties. Now, let's talk about another reason why we're seeing more demand for Bitcoin as time goes on. And that reason is that we are just seeing more adoption and we're seeing more ways for people to access Bitcoin. This year was a big year because we got the approval of these spot Bitcoin ETFs. And for a long time, Bitcoin was kind of in the background, right? It was kind of underground, and we really didn't see the traditional finance community investing heavily in Bitcoin. But now with the approval of these spot Bitcoin ETFs and advocates like Larry Fink in the Bitcoin space saying that, hey, you should allocate to Bitcoin, we're seeing a ton of money flood into these spot Bitcoin ETFs. And that's a big reason why we saw the Bitcoin price head a lot higher into that halving. And I'm surprised that the Bitcoin price isn't higher right now. We will have to see how it performs over the next year. But I thought that with the approval of these spot Bitcoin ETFs, with Bitcoin becoming an election topic, that we would already be above 100K right now. But the Bitcoin price is unpredictable. I just see a lot of Bitcoin demand and I see less Bitcoin supply, and I think that the price is going higher. We're also seeing other vehicles which are allowing people to get access to Bitcoin, like MicroStrategy, who's pretty much come out and said that, hey, we're putting all our capital into Bitcoin. And we've seen the MicroStrategy stock just head super high over the past couple of years as it has become a big Bitcoin play in an indirect way. And we've also seen a growth in Bitcoin exchanges and Bitcoin brokers, places where people can go to buy Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has become a lot more accessible than it was 10 years ago. And the other reason why we're seeing more Bitcoin demand is we're just seeing these signs of Bitcoin adoption. Like I said, it's being talked about in a US election a lot. It's become a main talking point for these candidates. We saw El Salvador come out and make Bitcoin legal tender a couple of years ago, and they've been stacking Bitcoin ever since. We've heard that the United States could potentially have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So really, we're just seeing a lot more Bitcoin adoption out there. We're seeing more and more merchants start to accept Bitcoin, and we're seeing some businesses start to copy the MicroStrategy strategy by just allocating their capital to Bitcoin. You could think of Metaplanet, that Japanese company who has started to copy the MicroStrategy playbook. So really, with all this adoption, all these ways for people to get access to Bitcoin, more people are just starting to pay attention and talk about it and start to learn about it more. And I think as we see more currency debasement, that's really going to be the key. People are going to see that this current system, this existing system, is not sustainable, and it's going to force them to open their eyes to Bitcoin and say, hey, maybe this is a better base layer for a monetary system. Maybe this system that isn't controlled by governments, where we have a cap supply of the money, maybe this is a better way for us to live our lives, right? For us to have a better functioning economy and for people to be able to store their wealth and not be robbed through inflation. So I think that over time, more and more people are just going to realize that Bitcoin is a better money and it's a better alternative to this fiat currency system that we have. That wraps it up for this video. Expect big moves in the Bitcoin price over the next year and expect volatility over the next couple of months. If you didn't like and subscribe, please make sure to do that now. Really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.